Valley. What?
Oh, no, go right ahead. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure. Sorry, we sort of jumped right into the talk already. Just didn't have a chance to hit the record button. So we are, just as a heads up to everybody,
Okay now?
we
Good.
are recording. That was an excellent intro. I didn't mean to
anytime you
interrupt the
like.
flow, Chris, at all. I just didn't want to miss this
Yeah,
good stuff
stop
that
me
you
anytime.
are going and telling us.
Yeah.
I
If
also
I take
wanted
too
to,
long, just tell me.
no,
Right?
this
So I
is
like
wonderful.
I like Q&A a lot. So
Perfect.
and
So I just wanted to welcome everybody. And Chris, thank you for being here. You could probably hear Chris's partner, Barbara Knight, sitting aside, his right side, our left on the screen. Barbara Knight is also an artist. You're hearing her sort of chime in with stories. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome, Chris. Everybody, welcome. I'm so glad all of you could be here this evening. My name is Matthew. We all, I think, know each other at this point. I've co-founded and co-direct and co-run Minus Space in Brooklyn. We're nearly 20 years old later this year. This is a really exciting event for us to be able to present Chris's work. A little off script at the moment. This is our second solo show with Chris. You all probably know, he's mentioned it already. He's a sculptor's sculptor. He's very well known for his iconic ramp works, which we presented a survey of during his first exhibition with us a number of years ago. And I'm just really excited to be able to do this second show with Chris regarding works on Mylar that he made during the 1980s. And we had a great sort of segue in there already, most of which I wasn't able to get on the recording. So we may have to repeat a couple of those things, but I'm just really happy you're all here. Feel free to keep your cameras on if you have interest in doing so. It's always better to talk to faces than to names on screens. I mentioned we are recording this. We will post it on our YouTube channel when it's done for all sorts of reasons, but looking at you, Tanya, specifically, art history and posterity is a huge, important value for me as well. And, you know, if we're going to have this great conversation, I want it recorded for future generations to see this and to hear Chris talking about Chris's own work in the moment that it's on view in our space. So Chris needs no introduction. Born in 1934 in New York City. He mentioned he grew up early years in Crete, came back before the war. He has shown his work. I'll keep your bio really short because it's on our website. Chris has shown his work internationally for the past 60 years at this point. Has been based in New York City half the year and in Hania, Crete, the other half of the year. So those sort of dual locations feature very strongly in his work. You mentioned, Chris, he worked across all sorts of media, from installation to sculpture to drawing to performance to painting. You've done a lot of work in graphic design for many, many, many years. And one of the most important things to me, which we were all talking about before you hopped on, most of you, is that Chris is also a teacher and continues to teach in the undergraduate department at the School of Visual Arts, where you also went to school many moons ago. So Chris, you've been teaching there at least 50 years at this point, right?
Yes. 57.
57 years of students and teaching. And some of your students have already been through the show. So at any rate, we are talking tonight about Chris's new show at the gallery.
I said earlier.
It's in two parts. It's called Works on Mylar, and we're surveying works from the 1980s. And I don't want to interrupt you, Chris, so please take it away. You were just about to tell us how you started this body of work, but welcome.
As I said earlier, one of the reasons I'm still at the school is I required a lot of mentoring in my early days. And if it wasn't for my mentors that really got me through, so I'm trying to do the same thing back. And I feel great satisfaction from that. So when did we start?
You said
I went to King Valley, and I was getting bored with the weekend with the visit. So I went to the lumberyard, and I said, I think I'll just make a ramp into the woods. And that sort of started. I had done all the resin works, and the resin works had been shown all over in shows, but I needed to change something, and I was slowly getting to the outdoors, the outdoor environment, and Keene Valley was the right place to do this. So over the weekend, I built the first ramp. You know, it was 15 feet long by 10, 12 feet high. And it went into the woods. And it was quite nice. I said, well, so from there, I started to do all this whole series of ramp works, which I still do to this day on call. Um, the, the Mylar works were in concert with the ramp works. And in a way, there are a lot of the images that you see are either, frontal or from above, or they could be sites, they can be parts of the ramp structure. This is where the information came from. But basically, most of the information came from the ramps. Okay. Oh yeah. I mean, Greece had a big influence on my work. And I've only missed in all the years, I've only missed 2 years of not going to Greece. So I mean, traveling around Greece and seeing the sites, you can't miss. I mean, the ancient sites were cited so beautifully. All you got to do is measure, sit there, watch it, measure it, meditate on it, and I can go to any site, and somebody said, oh, "Can you put something in there?" And I know immediately. If you give me 10 minutes, no problem. I'll string it out for you in yellow cords, easily. And I think that's from the experience of really seeing these ancient sites.
Chris,
Getting back to the
saying,
Mylar works.
sorry, Chris, you were saying about the ramp works, Chris. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You were saying about the ramp works that those really came out of like Greek and ancient kind of architectural forms, right? So those ramps are referring to sort of like climbing spaces, climbing stairs, the backs of temples, these kinds of things, correct?
They always had walkways in the theater. In the ancient theaters, always had little inclined walkways. And the walkways are all over these ancient sites. So the elevations, to watch them go, you can really hone in on that. And so that was a huge influence. I mean, it was just a straightaway influence. And I've always been interested in Rodchenko. He likes diagonals. I like the diagonal very much. The diagonals shows up in my work frequently, and whether it's inverted or straight away, Rodchenko taught me about diagonals. So I was always I'm a self-taught sculptor who got it all out of the books. I sometimes think that most art schools can really put you into trouble, with learning about art. So, but that's just a prejudice of mine. Back to the ramp work. So somewhere along the line there, at the beginning of the ramp works, I was always drawing, and because of my graphic design experience, the Mylar was always used by silkscreen printers and architects. And so I was at the silk screeners one day, and I really liked this material. I said, "What is this, Bill?" And he said, "Oh, it's Mylar. We just use it for, silk screening." So I said, "Really, give me a roll of it." So it was 9 mil. It was really heavy Mylar, like we see here, not the very flimsy that you buy at Blick's. And anything I put on this material would work beautifully. I mean, I could put ink on it, wash it off. I could put acrylic on it, it was stable. I could put oil paint on it, it stuck. Graphite, beautiful. Had luminosity. It was like a cinematic, it had a cinematic quality to it. This like a big screen, but it wasn't a screen. It was opaque and translucent at the same time. So I got enamored with it. That's all. And I made maybe 630. I think the last count as I was recording them down, 630 works on Mylar in my lifetime. So yeah, now the thing is also there was no deterioration at all. These were in a tube. The ones we're showing are from 83 to 86, or 89, sorry. And I rolled them, I opened them up, and there was no yellowing, no deterioration. It's a totally stable, fixed material. I mean, it might someday just go poof, but for our purposes in our lifetime, it's been fine.
Yeah,
And
they
I-
were meticulous when we opened them up, Chris. I mean, we were sort of pulling tubes out of closets and drawers and
Yeah.
storage and just trying to get sort of assess like how many works there were and what they looked like. And, they range in size from 10 by 10 feet down to, a postcard this big. So we had the whole gamut all rolled out all over your loft, piles of Mylar works. And I think we were all, Barbara included, and I know your daughter and son-in-law we were all like amazed by how well they had held up. I mean, 40 years of, materials on Mylar, on plastic essentially, and they looked brand new.
Right.
But it took getting them on those white walls of the gallery
Yeah.
to really have them,
That's
the
true.
white walls, shine through the material, and then you really see them. As you said, Matthew, at the time, you couldn't see them on this wood floor, but when you got them up in the gallery, wow, they really sparkle.
Then I did the big ones I really showed at UMass and Nassau County Museum, Klaus Nordenhacker. They had the space to show the big ones. And then Eric Siegeltuck, Oscarson Siegeltuck. I did show the big ones in quite a few places. Only one at a time, usually. But in the museums, I showed, say, 5 or 6, and they were pretty impactful. But I had not seen them for a very long time myself. So when Matthew gave me the opportunity to do this, it was really. And we're doing it in 2 sections, which is I'm very curious to see what the second iteration is going to be. So, yeah, this is quite a new experience. The only thing that's very strange is that deja vu is so very dangerous thing, you see. So I go back to this period, and I'm trying to do current work, and with COVID in the middle here somewhere, and I'm in total.
Are we losing Chris a little bit, or is it just me?
It's frozen.
Okay, so hold on, everybody. Can you all hear me okay?
Between doing exhibition. I didn't hear you.
Okay, Chris, sorry, we just sort of froze up a little bit. Could you repeat that last sentence for us, please?
You mean about going deja vu?
There you go. That's the one. So we'll repeat the deja vu part. How about that for irony?
In the middle and trying to do new work is very chaotic and confusing. So you have to going into a passive state, trying to control myself. That I'll start probably working really well again by summertime in Greece, or in Crete, where we go for 3 or 4 months. So, but it's not so easy to look at your own work from way back then, and but it's okay. It's okay. It's yeah. After that, what was interesting is that a lot of the Mylars led me into Bob Blackburn's printmaking workshop. Called me one day and said, Bob called me and he said, I have a grant and I want to spend it on you. Can you come in and make some etchings with us? I said, Bob, I was a graphic designer and I gave that up a long time ago. I don't want to do that. He said, no, it's nothing like that at all. So he introduced me to Bill Hall, and it was absolutely great. We've made so many prints together. We had a 25-year romance until Bill retired in not
2015, 2017, something like that.
yeah. And where did he go? He went down
North Carolina,
Asheville. Yeah.
Asheville.
So and we've had a couple of exhibitions at universities with all these works, and we have 100 etchings we've made, additions, different things. Because he was like a Superman and working. We worked together really beautifully. So that was one of my really wonderful experiences, working with Bill. And I think they sort of marry together the same kind of imagery, but done in a different medium. That taught me something else too. And aquatine etchings is a beautiful medium. So when Bill moved to Pace, he got it worked out that I could go work there with him. And so I'd go once a week. And for a long time, we made a lot of prints. And that was really good. I miss him now. Then from there, I continued doing the installation works. You know, the installations are always my thing. I always loved going on the road, stay in a hotel, and go from the hotel to the institution or wherever, on the park or wherever it was, and to meet with everybody and collaborate and make large scale works. You know, I mean, I still get a thrill doing it. So from back then, from the 80s, you know, till now, I'm still working on some kind of large scale projects, which I'm doing one in Greece now on the waterfront in Crete, where they're redesigning and rebuild the whole waterfront. So I have like this huge 12-meter circle, fractured circle of stone that I'm putting together. So yeah, there's always something to do. So I still have the energy to do it, so I do it.
That's what you do.
That's what I do.
I love it.
Shall we leave it open to asking these questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, we if anyone
Still the
has
same
questions,
weight
I
I
mean, we're I
was
think
when I was.
I'm sorry,
I'm
Chris.
still, don't ask me how much I weigh, because I'm still the same weight as when I was 18 years old. Exactly, 135 pounds.
And the only difference now, Chris, is you're no longer playing ice hockey. Yeah, they made you stop, right? Well, we are an intimate group here, so feel free to sort of unmute yourself, raise a hand, ask a question. Of course, you could pop open the chat field too if you have questions. And I like the kind of informal banter nature that that this is taking on, which is amazing. Chris, I have one question for you. So you mentioned earlier on, and again, Tanya, you asked this question as well as we were getting started. We're doing a two-part show. It's all works on Mylar. It's all between the years 83 and 89. And we decided to kind of cleave it down the middle in two installments, like two chapters. The first chapter that we have on view is primarily organized around certain formal shapes, including like the work that you have behind you on your screen, that blue form, that upside down inverted triangle Chris calls delta. So we have a number of deltas on view. And then we also have a number of similar sort of downward pointed triangles. I'm not going to do this so well on the camera, that go by Pegasus series. And then I've got an Atlantis work, which is a square sort of teetering on one end, hanging in my office. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, these are very specific titles, Pegasus, you know, Delta, Atlantis. Where are these coming from? Clearly there's a Greek reference. What is it about those forms that get tied to certain names?
Oh, I love the title works. You know, I even keep a little note, some in my notebook. If I hear a new title, especially short titles, I really like them. Sometimes they relate, sometimes they don't relate. I think Pegasus is obvious. You know, it's like a wing. It might be a little too obvious, but because I also see Pegasus from another perspective. But
Which is the other perspective.
The other perspective is kind of from flight, you know, myself in flight, looking downward at a site. So, yeah, Pegasus is in the air for sure, flying around. The equilateral triangle is, you know, I'm big on circle, triangle, square. You want to learn about design, art, you learn about circle, triangle, square, you'll learn that you can master that, you'll become good at what you're doing. So my favorite is this equilateral triangle. And so I use it frequently, sometimes as a shield, sometimes as sometimes just as a visual device. You know, I'm very unconscious in the way I work, you know, and a lot of the things that I do are not like from my brain, but from my gut. So, and I feel them. I mean, there's logic involved. I'm thinking all the way up to the work, but then once I let go to do it, I'm free falling. So Delta, you know, comes up very often, and I gave it the name Delta because it's an all-encompassing Greek word a delta, a D, a Greek D is it's kind of nice.
But it's reversed. Your
But it's
delta is
reversed. It doesn't matter. I could turn it around the other way and use it in a work also. That wouldn't be a problem. But it's a delta. It depends on how you're looking at it. And then the stele, of course, is always in all the columns in Greece that held up everything. That's in the next iteration. Will be the stele is a kind of, what are we doing? Stele and what else? Oh, and
mastabas.
mastabas. Yeah, mastaba. I had been to Egypt once, twice, and I loved Egypt. It's just incredible. And I did see a number of mastabas there, and so that one is straight out of real mastabas. And so,
Do you want to explain that? What a mastaba is?
oh, a mastaba is a pyramid, truncated pyramid with the top cut off. So it's not pointed at the top. Just if I took the equilateral triangle and I cut the tip off, down, turn it around and cut the tip off, you have a mastaba. So the mastaba is straight away what it is. But the mastaba is also a ramp. Mastaba is also seen from different perspectives in your mind.
Or sight.
Or a site, or a complete site. Something could go into that. But I titled it mastaba. So it's just for reference, identity reference. This way you'll know what a Pegasus is, what a mastaba is. And then the stele is obvious because it's a column, but the column can spread, almost a total black, painting the Mylar totally black and pinning it up. That could be a column. I got my nose up against it.
Or it could be the front of the lamp.
Well, it could be
The planar front of the lamp,
definitely.
which is what Stephen Westphal said.
Yeah, Stephen Westphal did refer to that. With that sometimes I like to taper them, but they were tapered also in the Acropolis. Tapered as they come down, just to give you the illusion that they're all straight. The optical illusion you're looking up. So I like the stele is the stele. I sort of have done a lot of steles in my life because there's always some kind of light that flows behind the stele. And I was in Greece. If I look at a column, I'd always, and if it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it'd be such a strange light behind the column. If I see it in the morning with the bright light, it'd be another kind of light. And all hours it would change, shift and change. And I've made kind of a series of those, where this light sort of appears through the sides of the stele. But I don't know, does that answer your question at all?
Definitely. Yeah. So the first part, again, we're sort of working with one sort of set of iconography and series, and then our next iteration of the show, we're going to take the first part down on February 11th. It'll conclude, and then we'll put up the next one that'll start on February 18th. That will feature the mastaba and stele works, which will have a very different kind of energy, right?
I would like almost to say, to title everything untitled.
Mhm.
That would almost help, because lots of people look into the title. Oh, but I don't see it. They always have to have some kind of narrative, with the work or something. Just feel the work or experience it in another way, like dancing or, making love. You don't like analyze the whole thing. Maybe you do. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, untitled, all of them. Matthew, change all the titles to untitled.
We're redoing the checklist. I mean, obviously there are other series that are involved here that you're referring to. Some of the works are named after planets and also Greek gods like Uranus, and there's works that are named after cities like Leningrad and all sorts of other sort of things that are evocative, but they're not depictions of those things. They're just sort of evocative of them, which I really they're somewhat mysterious. I really love that about them.
I made that one, that Leningrad one, right after I visited Leningrad, St. Petersburg. I did a show in Finland, and they gave me a gift to go to St. Petersburg. And I went to Hermitage and places. I saw some incredible things there. And I never forgot the word Leningrad. So I made a red Delta, which was really nice.
Yep.
And I titled it Leningrad.
Leningrad. Exactly. And the other thing I was going to add too, Cris, you mentioned earlier about your printmaking. If anyone is unfamiliar with Chris's sort of body of works, and we're talking like several decades of prints of different shapes and sizes and materials and methodologies in the print studio, we have images up on our site of them, and they're really engaging. I think you have them on your site too, Cris. Am I mistaken?
Mhm.
Print editions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna say no, sorry.
yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you can check them out in a couple of different places. We've got them up on, if you go to the Mindspace site and you click on the main link editions and just scroll down the page of it, you can see easily 20 plus prints that Cris has made over the years, to get a sense of kind of the breadth and depth of those. And again, you're one of the few artists that we work with that actually does print editions, which I think is kind of amazing. Not many artists are interested in or have committed as much time and energy to that medium. So I find that really fascinating.
Swedes. I go to Sweden and work with Uli Larson, and they have a percent program there, and the government buys for hospitals and everything. So there's always something to make there. I haven't done it for a little while now, but he makes great prints. He's one of the best in Europe. So I look forward maybe this spring to go on the way to Greece, make some prints. It's always nice to be on the road because it's social and it's friends and it's like a life.
So do you, Cris, I mean, you've mentioned that now a couple of times. Do you see a difference between the works that you're thinking about making when you're in New York City, working in your loft downtown, versus when you're overseas for shows or when you're spending time at home in Crete? Is there a difference to how you approach your work?
Give me your hit on that, Barbara.
What do you think, Barbara? What are you seeing with Cris is doing
What
over
I
there?
see is that Cris is probably and feels more, the light is so different in Crete. The light is so brilliant, it's so exquisite that it infuses what anybody makes. And also the setup that we have is different there. And Cris often works on a big balcony. The studio there has 3 balconies, and he works on the balcony, and he does freer works there. Like he did a huge series on the Greek alphabet that used the iconography of the Greek alphabet. The delta came up again, and all the characters of the Greek alphabet. Sometimes one on top of another, capital letters, small letters, whatever. And he does frottage there, and he just has because it's almost all work on paper
And photography too.
and photography. And
Yeah.
then now he's working on this piece for this for the waterfront. But another piece that he did in Crete was an installation at the Contemporary Art Museum of Crete in Rethymnon. And it was the same year that he had the show with you, Matthew, at Mindspace. It was called Spira Didimo. Took the form of a spiral, inspired by
It was the building that was the
building was
the great part.
The building was the great part. It was very site specific, making a spiral. It's on his website, and I think
found us. What was it?
a
shell. What were they called?
snail.
A snail shell. A big snail shell had beautiful lines going around it. I said, "Wow, I'm going to save that." So I took a picture of it, and I had it. And then they asked me to do this piece in the most incredible little building up on the fortress, and it was a symmetrical building. And so I did stones all the way around, like the center column. But I took the photograph, blew it up, and put it up in the corner, and you could see the a little didactic, but it was all right.
And because the ceiling, the building had been used as a storehouse, I think in the time of the Venetian conquering.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
And
beautiful.
it had a double arch ceiling, Didimo, that's 2, and then 2 arches, and the spiral went around the floor. But when you see the picture of it, you can see how perfectly it fit the space. And it was very different because up till then, all these works had been, all the ramp works and a lot of the works were in straight lines.
Yeah.
And this was in a circle. And
Well,
then the work
that's
that
right.
he's planning for the waterfront in Crete is also a circular form.
I never
So
did
that's
circles in my whole life.
Very different.
I never
and
did
that's
circles.
Crete,
I always
that's
said,
Crete.
I said I would never do a circle for some reason. And all of a sudden, you know, you never say never. The thing is, I'm a New York artist. I'm an artist from New York. My work, if I go to Sweden, which I do frequently, I had in the past, I make New York work. It's it's in my gut. Don't shift because you're going to be a Swede now, or you're going to go to Switzerland and do that. I mean, there are things that happen. I did a ramp on Max Bill's house. It was really a great experience in Zurich. So it was really strange. I went there. They lined me up with an engineering firm, and I said, "What are you doing?" I just cut the pieces all myself. I'll build this ramp. No problem. Oh no! They have to have a formal thing, and it has to go like to the DOB and the XRI and the. I said, "All right, if that's what you do here, but it's not going to change the form, the idea of what I was going to do in his garden." No, it's sometimes it's the legal stuff going on. You can get this into that, you can move that to this, logistical stuff. But usually the imagery is, when I brought these works that we have here and I showed them at Clas Nordenhackers, they went over big in Malmo, Sweden. They loved them. Everybody fits perfectly. So I think there is a universality, of how everybody feels about art. God, I don't think it changed that much. Of course, I change a bit, but I go right back to probably the things I know best. Who's next?
Very, very good. Thank you for answering that, Cris. I don't want to monopolize here. So if there are questions or folks have more specific things they would like to ask, I know we have a number of artists that work site specifically. I'm looking at you, Lynn Harlow and Russell, and where'd you go on my screen? There was one other person here that are working sort of site sensitively, where you show up at a place and respond in this kind of call and response way, but where you bring your experiences to it. But if there are questions, feel free to raise a hand or jump right in.
Here's my glasses.
If not, we'll just keep chatting.
I'm just going to jump in and say, I found that very interesting that I turned my video off instead of putting my sound on. That
Okay,
the
Tanya, go right ahead.
circular form is appearing from the travels to Greece. And that is exactly what I was thinking, site specificity and responding to a place and a feeling and a culture, whatever it may be. The circular works appearing in a very specific place. I think is just something, quite interesting to explore if that's happened in the past. And now with this new piece, which I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, the newest one you're working on.
It's very interesting. I was given a problem to do over 1 year to the next year, and we're still working on it. So I brought it home. There I was, Schenko had taken me over again. I was making some models with the diagonal big steel pieces. I wanted to go up in the air. I didn't want it to go down on the ground. So I did a number of models, maybe 6 models, and then I had some little models in a shoebox that of little I-beams going around in a circle with a broken, and people sitting on the I-beams. And Barbara brought it out to me after I'd done all these other diagonal steel pieces. And she brought it out to me and said, "Look, here it is." So, I mean,
No.
I always get help from my friends. It's no problem. I like collaborative, I work collaboratively. That's the way I worked as a designer. And I work in art. If I work privately making drawings and making my Mylar works. But when I'm doing installation works, I'm depending on people. When I'm in the print shop, making etchings, I depend on people. So I like a marriage, if you're going to do that. So Barbara brought this out to me, and lo and behold, we included it in the presentation. So We included the whole presentation, pictures, everything with all my, so of course, the architect that I'm working with, wonderful guy, he just went right to it, just like that. It's as simple as pie. There was no debate, no conversation. He just went right to this. This is really will fit in this whole scheme of his idea, because it's quite a modern waterfront is designing. So now we have to find huge stones up in the mountains, and then we have to see what the flooring is going to be like to see what kind of stone we want to put on that. So I need more help. Show me. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Huh? I don't hear you. I don't hear you. Punch your.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Can I
Yes,
ask
this
a art
is-
history
This
question?
is right on the waterfront, Chris, just to clarify, they're redoing the entire waterfront promenade in Hania, Crete. And this is going to be one of these like big nodule kind of meeting spaces that's overlooking the water, right, Chris?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
40, we figured maybe 10 to 12 meters, which is 3 times 10, 30 feet diameter, big circle. So should be interesting. Should be very interesting. But I really honor collaborating. I played ice hockey from 9 years old till 42 years old. And I collaborated a hell of a lot on that ice. Let me tell you, there was no other way you could play. It was a wonderful, a wonderful experience of 5 people getting it together. I mean, really getting it together. So, whatever that's worth.
Chris, can I ask you, Chris? Chris,
Yeah, we're on.
for the last half of the 1980s, I went over to your show. You had a show at Wynn Kramarski's
Oh,
Mylar pieces, and I think they were much more simplified than these, and I think they were later. Am I right? That they got simpler as you went along?
Yes.
Is it possible? And you went around with me. You were gallery sitting. You said, "Oh yeah, the artists here have to gallery sit."
Wow.
And it was a bright sunny day. The sun was just flowing into the room. And you went around with me and you talked to me about every single Mylar piece in that show. And it was really great. But I remember the work being much simpler than the work in this show.
Well, that they were done in the 90s, see, so
Was it the 90s?
Look at the most current ones, they became very pure and not too much background and just tone. Which ones do you prefer?
Well, I would love the simpler pieces. The more reductive, the better, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I love those.
Yeah. Wynn did too. He made the big rectangle, a very big rectangle, went to the modern. So I was really proud of him. It was like an 8-foot or 9-foot tall rectangle on a tilt.
So you think that was the 90s? You don't think it was the late 80s?
Barbara's going to go check it.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the 90s.
What's on your
It
resume?
was the body of work after the ones that we're showing. So they were same material, but the forms became much more sort of clean and simplified.
Yeah, and that's
Again,
what
I didn't see the show. This is before my time, but I've only seen the catalog. So
I did quite a few works then that were really almost, you could see the Mylar with a tone on it, just a light tone, film tone on it. What was that, Barbara? Oh.
we're gonna give Barbara a big round of applause at the end of this too. She's the go-to, filling in all the details. While we're waiting, Lynn, it looked like you had a question too.
I do have a question, picking up on a specific reference that you made, Chris. You were referencing Rodchenko and his diagonals as an important reference for you. And, diagonals show up in a lot of places. So I'm wondering, what is it about Rodchenko's diagonals that especially got you?
First,
Art history question.
First, I'll tell you, I grew up in Washington Heights on 174th Street, and there's a swimming pool called the High Bridge Swimming Pool there. The hybrid swimming pool has two, I think the second largest swimming pool in the country. And it has two pools, one for kids and wading, huge. And then they have the deep end. And they have it start from 3 feet and it goes all the way to the 10 foot. It has two ramps going down like that. So as a kid, I played in that place for, and I'm sure that influenced me in this unconsciously, though this ramp works, you know. But I remember playing in there, running up and down. Then it's a straightaway at the bottom, running up the ramps, running down. So now Rodchenko, the question again. Sorry.
What is it about Rodchenko?
What is it about Rodchenko? I think Rodchenko, like Max Bill, they were all graphic designers also. And usually graphic designers have a very difficult time to become artists. And so I think Rodchenko used a lot of his experiences in graphic design, like photography and his graphic sense and his typographic sense. He used that in art. I mean, all the way to the other end, from left to right. He used it all the way. And I think in his photography, I always admired how he just was taking pictures on a diagonal. You would always see a building would be on a diagonal. You would see a street would be on a diagonal. And there wasn't early times, there wasn't too much reference to that, but I picked it up right away that he was really, I mean, scholars knew this very well about it, but yeah, there was a connection between my career and his. I don't mean to make myself Rodchenko, but the way we sort of evolved into being artists, I think that coming from graphic design. You know, typography and graphic imagery, like logo types and all that. They give you a lot of information, especially typography. A lot of information for symbols, making symbols and turning those symbols into sculpture, turning them into all kinds of art. So I think that's where Rodchenko, I admired him a lot. Of all of the people, he was doing that diagonal thing consciously. What do you got here, Bob? Oh, Rodchenko. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Oh, it really does. Thank you. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for that, Lynn. Great question.
Rodchenko books.
I have a question.
So Mario, you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, Cris, I was wondering, was it then in the beginning when you started making the ramps that we met? Because I think I met you at the Helbrom Gallery when you had an installation there. Was that in 1977 then?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that big
that
long
blue-
ramp,
that
that
blue
big
room.
long.
Yes, in the blue room, and that color
blue
blue
room.
behind you. Yeah, the color blue behind you reminds me completely of it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, what's he doing?
Getting out a model.
This was the model for the blue room.
Oh, yes, it is.
The model for the blue room.
Oh,
Wow.
yes, I do remember that color. It's so fabulous. I will remember that when I come and see you guys.
It was nice because the window, and there was a window in front of that. It was only like a
Yes.
3-foot walkway, and then the rest of the room was this blue room.
Yeah,
Wall
it
to
was
wall.
on Chambers Street, the view.
So when you saw it, the light at 10 o'clock in the morning was very different than the light at 4 in the afternoon.
Yes, I loved it. It was fabulous. So I just,
blue, it kept changing. So I did a couple of
well,
maybe
you see.
4 blue rooms in my career.
Oh, wow. Well, anyway, thank you for doing this and having
Well,
this.
thank you
show. I
for
can't
bringing it
wait.
up because that's really nice. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I would love to come and visit you guys and show you my book. I did a book last year.
Yes, yeah, good.
Yeah. I spoke to Barbara about it, but this is about you today. But thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Thank you for the anecdote too. That's terrific. So you've been following this, and Chris, you just happen to have that model right in front of you.
Yeah, right? How
What are the
amazing
chances
is
of
that?
that?
Amazing.
That's
Keeping
pretty
records
amazing.
there.
Put on my
Well
list.
done there. Well done. I see Pat has a question. Go right
Where's
ahead,
Pat?
Pat.
Right here.
Yeah.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. As you know, the diagonal was really foreign to Greek architecture and sculpture until they came up with the invention of chariots. And they had to build the chariot ramp up to get it into the fortress. That is the
That's right.
archetype of the
Oh.
ramp, which was imported from the East as they got the chariots from the East.
Oh,
So that diagonal line is, you don't see it in architecture, you don't see it in sculpture. The Greeks are adiametrical. They do it great with mathematics. They love the triangle, but they almost refuse to use it in architecture, in early classical architecture or the sculpture. It's all straight up. So your idea of the ramp with the diagonal is just perfect. And I noticed the overwhelming presence in this Mylar, these pieces, of the diagonal. It's like the diagonal is forcing its way, literally, to occupy and dominate these huge Mylar pieces. I mean, it's very aggressive, the conjunction of that black.
I like what you're saying.
Okay, well, you got a really
Very much
dynamic
what you said.
show here.
I did find a really beautiful ramp in Delphi, up at the temple of, I forgot her name, or Athena maybe. But it's a beautiful ramp, a stone ramp. And around Greece, I have found a few stone ramps. But I
Were
think
they
they're
chariot
later.
ramps?
They were put there later.
Were they chariot
Yeah.
ramps?
Yes, I
They
think so.
incorporated that ramp, as you say exactly, in the theaters for
Yes,
the people to walk up. That ramp is an adumbration of the chariot ramp going up in their theaters. So anyway, I
a couple
can.
of years ago, head of engineering in Thessaloniki, Greece, the head of the engineering school was commissioned by UNESCO or somebody to make ramps for the handicaps in Thessaloniki. And so he called me, says, I love your ramps. He said, you want to come and help us? I said, sure. So sent me a ticket. And I went there and I looked at all these sites and all these archaeologists. They wanted to put ramps for the people in wheelchairs and all that. I said, well, just put those portable ramps up. So what happened was I ended up making two walkways and ramps. One was into the rotunda from the street, and it was all archaeological digs underneath. I didn't want to touch anything, so I just made a ramp based on a V shape on the bottom, like the keel of the ship, and a walkway. And you could see through the ramp was the like subway. You know what you see in the street. You could see the egg crate. What do you call that? Steel.
Yeah, it's
Grating.
metal grating.
Yeah. And then I did one at the fortress, up in the fortress, where they would have to go up just like the chariots. When you reminded me of that, the fortress. Yeah. So they still have to get into these spaces. It's not so easy.
Right.
You know, Chris, I remember seeing your ramp that was very aggressive, very imposing, and it was at Eric Stark Gallery, the little gallery on Broadway. And you did a piece there and you couldn't get into the gallery because your ramp was there.
There's another blue ramp, I think.
Yeah.
Another blue ramp.
So
You're
that,
right.
that was, talking about installation and working with an architectural space. That was very impressive. You tried to get in, but you couldn't get in. I think maybe you let people get in maybe 18, 20 inches into the gallery, and then they were at the toe of the ramp. and the ramp took up the whole gallery space.
You only had
Matthew, it was
to-
a little bit smaller than your space in Gowanus, actually.
Yeah,
Also, 55 commercial.
yeah.
And Russell, was that also a blue ramp as well or something?
I
Blue
believe
ramp.
it was. I believe it was, because I think you did the show right after me, or I did the show after
The thing
you.
about that was that Eric, I did
Yeah.
4 shows for Eric, and I did the
Yeah.
last show that he was moving to another gallery.
Right.
He was
Yes.
Closing. So he was closing the gallery, so I said, I'm gonna do the final one.
Do
I'll
the
put a
ramp,
new
yep.
ramp in here. And yeah, that was really nice. I mean, I'm indebted to him for allowing me to do it, because that's the deal. It's not anybody will leave it up for 3 weeks or a month
That's right.
and just come every day, and there's no business to really do, you know? So, yeah, Eric was really good to me that way. I always ended up doing the last show in the space that he was at 4 times. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Russell. Great anecdote. Really cool.
forgot
Are there
that.
any, just keeping an eye on the time, everybody, we're just at about 8 o'clock. Are there any pressing questions, thoughts, recollections, reflections, memories, anecdotes you'd like to share before we wind down here? Any pressing questions?
I'd like to share something.
Go right ahead, Tom.
He gave me my start in art. Back in the 70s, I worked as his assistant, working, helping build things, and at Nassau County Museum, sort of other places. And during that time, he recommended me to an alternative space, and I had my first show because he recommended it was Ward's Island. And I believe he got the curators from the Nassau County Museum to come out and see the work. And I got an individual show at the museum, and it went into the permanent collection. And this is all because of the generosity of Cris Gianakos and the great man that he is.
You did it yourself all the way. You did it yourself. So, you know, great. I'm
Yeah, but
happy for you.
you talk about learning. I went to school and studied art, but I learned more working in the studios of artists, building their works for the Whitney
Yeah.
Annual in '68, and working for you and finding what the real word was about, and who the hell is Frank Gaudio, and what is he, how does he figure into this world of putting works out in the city,
Yeah.
led me into having, on to other work, doing site-specific work on history, getting grants from National Endowment, Warhol and sort of other things. Now that work is all in the NYU's Fails archives. So all started with me gluing together pieces of wood for you. So
That's great. Oh, it's a nice, what a great thought. God, thanks for saying that. Just, it
all
really
true.
means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
Wow.
That's
That's
amazing.
good. Keep going. That's all. Keep going.
I sort of
Keep trucking.
sped through my introductory comments, but that was one of the things I wanted to stress as well, which is just
Thank you.
how great and generous you are,
I
Chris.
still have this,
Oh,
I still have this book on ramps.
yes. Yeah. Wonderful. Oh, geez. That's very touching. Yes, really.
Love it. Thank you, Tom, for that. I really appreciate that. Any other
Okay.
questions or anything you'd like to share before we wind down here? We got time for one more thought. Or not.
All right, that's good.
Okay, well, I would like to just thank everyone again for joining us this evening. This was a lively conversation. I like the direction it went, and maybe we do them more loose in this fashion going forward, which I really like. So I'm really happy you could be here for our first talk of the year. Chris, Barbara, thank you all so very much for all your terrific work on the exhibition and for helping put this evening together. Again, as I mentioned, Chapter 1 of Chris's show will be up for a couple more weeks through the 11th. It'll come down and we're going to do a quick costume change and put up part 2 featuring mastabas and steles. And that'll start on the 18th and run through March 25th. Chris is also, if you are in and around New York City, Chris is going to be doing an in-person walkthrough of part 2 on, let me just check my notes, on Saturday, February 25th. It's also posted on our website at 3 p.m. So we'll have a chance to kind of revisit some of these ideas and see things in person and see each other in person. I'm just really grateful for all of you for being here this evening. And Cris, just thank you so much for a terrific presentation. And a round of applause, everybody, for Cris and Barbara. Thank you
so
all.
much.
We
It
need
was
to thank
wonderful.
Matthew for like the opportunity, because Matthew is just open to a completely open individual. You can say anything you want to him, and it's not, there's nothing negative involved here. So that's
Thank
a
you for
big
that.
plus.
Yeah,
So
just we're really lucky to present the work and just to have it at the space and have it on view. And you know, when you told me we were going to do this show, you pitched. I'm like, what works at these are we talking about? So I mean, we had no idea the kind of the scope and the scale of what this is. So it was it's been a real labor of love, like getting it all together and getting all the pieces measured and photographed and documented and of course presented. So again, come out if you have a chance to see them. There's plenty of time.
we all shrink, we shrink, we're not doing much work, maybe we shrink, and then all of a sudden, boom, it expands again. So this is kind of something that exploded, which is really, really, really good. So.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a chance to sort of like look back at these works, and of course we're looking forward. That was one of my questions for you too, and I'm glad you addressed it. Like, what are we doing now, Cris? We celebrated Chris's birthday when we were installing his show in early January. And we're like, we're not resting on our laurels here by any means. So it's great that you're talking about what you're working on next and what's going on in the studio and the commissions you're working on in Hanya. So it's just really, really thrilling to see you have this like really involved, committed, decades-long commitment to your work and to community. Tom, thank you for that. And to just doing good. So thanks everybody for being here. And Cris, thanks so much. And we're going to sign off. Well done, everybody. Thank you. Happy New Year. Lots of luck to everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all for being here. And Cris, thanks again. Barbara, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Well, I see Tanya sharing an image there of a print. Is that the trestle piece that Cris did?
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Oh, it looks like it's Marusi. It's Marusi.
Yeah, that's that beautiful Marusi ramp piece that you did over a quarry.
Oh, yeah.
Really nice. Well done, Tanya. Thank you. All right, everybody, have a great night. Wishing you all the best. Have a good year ahead, and we'll see you in the next
Thank
talk.
you.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Cris. Thanks, Barbara.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.
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 Bye, Cris.